The Silent Hunter. The crimson glow of distant stars painted the hull of the Caltharian dreadnought Worldbreaker as it led the massive invasion fleet through the void of space. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind, his back studying the tactical display that showed their target, the human colony world of New Geneva. The planet hung like a blue jewel in the darkness, completely unaware of the destruction approaching from the depths of space. "Fleet status report," Zekthor commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds for the Caltharian Empire. His scaled hide bore the ritual scars of victory, each mark representing a species that had fallen before his military genius. Sub-Commander Hickstal, the fleet's sensor specialist, consulted his readings with practiced efficiency. 237 vessels in formation, Admiral. 58 heavy cruisers, 89 destroyers, 42 assault carriers, and our command dreadnoughts. The human colony will fall within 6 standard hours of our arrival. The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. Intelligence. Reports had been clear about human military capabilities. Their species had barely achieved faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. Their ships were crude, their weapons primitive, and their tactics predictable. This would be another easy conquest for the ever-expanding Caltharian Empire. "Long-range sensors detecting something unusual, Admiral," announced another officer from across the bridge. The young Caltharian's voice carried a note of confusion that made Zekthor turn his attention to the secondary displays. "Define unusual, Officer Crixtel. Single contact, bearing 27 Mark IV, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. The signature is strange, sir. It appears to be a small vessel, possibly human design, but the readings are inconsistent." Zekthor's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary pair focused on the tactical screen. A single ship against his entire fleet. Either the humans were more foolish than intelligence suggested, or this was some kind of trap. "Show me." The main holographic display shifted to show a wireframe representation of the detected vessel. It was small compared to Caltharian warships, perhaps 300 meters in length, with an unusual design that seemed to shift and blur, even in the computer-generated image. "Attempt to get clearer readings," Zekthor ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship." Hickstal's claws worked frantically over his sensor controls, adjusting frequencies and amplifying detection arrays. His confusion deepened with each passing moment. "Admiral, this is impossible. The ship is there, but it isn't. Our sensors are detecting mass displacement and energy signatures, but the readings fade in and out like the vessel exists, only partially in our dimensional space." Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel Silent Dawn, Commander Elena Vasquez stood calmly on her bridge, watching the massive Caltharian fleet approach their position. Her dark eyes showed no fear, only the focused determination of someone who had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. The 42-year-old officer had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human space. Testing experimental technology against impossible odds. "Void Cloak is holding steady at 97% efficiency, Captain," reported Lieutenant James Chen from the engineering station. His fingers danced across holographic controls that monitored systems, so advanced that only a handful of humans truly understood how they worked. "The quantum distortion field is masking our presence perfectly. They can detect us just enough to know something is here, but not enough to target us effectively." Elena nodded, her attention split between the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet and the readouts from their revolutionary stealth system. The Void Cloak didn't just hide the Silent Dawn from sensors, it shifted the ship slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, making it exist in a quantum state between dimensions. To conventional detection systems, they were nothing more than a ghost. "How long until they reach optimal firing range?" she asked. 14 minutes, Captain. Their lead ships are already charging primary weapon systems." "Good. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity." Back on the Caltharian flagship, frustration was building among the bridge crew. Every attempt to get a clear sensor lock on the mysterious human vessel failed. The ship would appear solid for a few seconds, then fade to almost nothing, then reappear in a completely different location, as if it had teleported across space. "Admiral," Hickstal reported with growing anxiety, "the human vessel has moved again. It's now positioned directly above our formation, but I can't explain how it got there. Our sensors never detected any movement or energy discharge." Zekthor's scaled fists clenched in frustration. In 43 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. Ships didn't simply vanish and reappear. Physics didn't work that way. "Fire a warning shot," he commanded. "Show these humans the power they're facing." The Worldbreaker's primary plasma cannon charged with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the ship's massive hull. Energy that could melt through a kilometer of solid steel lanced out toward the mysterious human vessel's last known position. The beam passed harmlessly through empty space. "Target has vanished again, Admiral. No trace on any sensor array." Commander Vasquez watched the alien energy beam pass beneath her ship's hull, missing by mere kilometers. The void cloak had shifted, them just enough out of phase that the plasma bolt existed in normal space, while the silent dawn existed partially in quantum space. "Their turn," she said quietly. "Chen, target their lead cruiser's weapon systems. Precision strike, minimal damage. I want them confused, not destroyed." "Aye, Captain." Quantum torpedoes armed and ready. The silent dawn flickered briefly into normal space, just long enough to launch 2 small projectiles, then immediately phased back into its ghostly state. The quantum torpedoes were no larger than conventional missiles, but they carried warheads that could disrupt matter at the molecular level. Aboard the Caltharian cruiser Devastation, alarms began screaming as the ship's primary weapons array simply ceased to function. Chief Engineer Vex Cole stared at his diagnostic displays in complete bewilderment. "Commander, our plasma cannons are offline. The targeting systems show no damage, no power failures, no explanation. They just stopped working." Similar reports flooded in from other ships in the formation. Weapon systems were failing across the fleet, but there was no visible cause. No explosions, no hull breaches, no enemy fire that anyone could detect. It was as if the human ghost ship was reaching out with invisible hands to break their equipment. Admiral Zekthor felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine fear. This wasn't a battle. It was something far worse. His massive fleet was being systematically disabled by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't target, and couldn't understand. "All ships, random evasive maneuvers," he commanded, his voice betraying none of the uncertainty gnawing at his mind. "Don't maintain predictable formations. If we can't see them coming, at least we can make ourselves harder to hit." But even as the Caltharian vessels scattered across space in defensive patterns, the silent dawn adapted instantly. Elena Vasquez had studied every tactical manual the Empire had ever produced, analyzed every battle they had fought, and understood their psychology better than they understood themselves. "They're trying to minimize damage by spreading out," she observed, watching the alien ships disperse. "Chen, prepare for psychological warfare protocol. I want them to understand that nowhere is safe." The next 20 minutes became a nightmare for the Caltharian fleet. The human ghost ship appeared randomly throughout their formation, striking at different vessels with precision attacks that disabled systems without causing casualties. Each time the aliens tried to respond, their target would vanish before they could fire a shot. Engineering decks lost power, communication arrays went silent, navigation systems began showing false readings. The invisible enemy seemed to know exactly which systems to target for maximum psychological impact. The Caltharian crews began to panic, reporting ghost sightings and phantom energy readings that their sensors couldn't confirm. "Admiral," Sub Commander Hickstal reported with barely controlled terror in his voice, "we've lost effective combat capability on 63 vessels. The human ship is systematically disabling our entire fleet, and we have no way to fight back." Zekthor stared at the tactical display, watching his supposedly invincible armada fall apart under attack from a single enemy vessel that shouldn't exist according to every law of physics and warfare he understood. The humans had somehow developed technology that rendered conventional military doctrine completely obsolete. "Signal the retreat," he said quietly, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance. We need to reassess this situation. As the Caltharian fleet began its hasty withdrawal, long-range sensors detected something that made Admiral Zekthor's blood run cold. New contacts were appearing throughout the system. Not just one impossible human ship, but dozens of them, all displaying the same ghostly characteristics as the vessel that had just humiliated his entire force. Commander Vasquez smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fleet retreat in confusion and fear. The Silent Dawn had done its job perfectly, demonstrating the effectiveness of the Void Cloak technology and paving the way for what came next. Chen, signal the fleet, she commanded. Execute Operation Phantom Storm. All ships, prepare to decloak. As the Caltharian fleet fled toward the edge of the system, they were about to discover that the single ghost ship had been just the beginning. The real surprise was still coming. The Ghost Fleet revelation. The space around New Geneva began to shimmer and distort as reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Admiral Zekthor watched his tactical displays with growing horror as dozens of new contacts materialized from absolutely nothing. One moment the space was empty, the next it was filled with human warships that had appeared as if they had always been there. Impossible, he whispered, his forearms trembling as he gripped the command rail. Fleet count, Hixtel. How many ships are we detecting? The sensor specialist's voice cracked with disbelief as he reported the readings. 217 human vessels, Admiral. Frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and what appear to be their version of dreadnoughts. They're surrounding our entire formation in a perfect sphere. The quantum signatures match the ghost ship that's been attacking us. They're all using the same impossible technology. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiance, coordinating the largest stealth operation in military history. At 51 years old, she had overseen the development of the Void Cloak program from its earliest stages, transforming theoretical physics into practical military advantage. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a regulation style, but her eyes held the fire of someone who had just witnessed the impossible become reality. Ghost Fleet, this is Phantom Leader, she announced over the fleet communication network. All ships maintain stealth capabilities at minimal power. We want them to see us, but we also want them to remember that we can vanish again at any moment. The psychological impact on the Caltharian fleet was immediate and devastating. Centuries of military doctrine told them that stealth technology had limits. Ships could hide from sensors, but not entire fleets. Physics demanded that such large-scale, stealth operations were impossible due to power requirements and quantum interference. Yet here they were, surrounded by enemies who had somehow rewritten the fundamental laws of warfare. Commander Elena Vasquez brought the Silent Dawn alongside the flagship, her smaller vessel no longer alone in its impossible capabilities. Excellent work, Sarah, she transmitted on a secure channel. The psychological preparation was perfect. They're completely demoralized. The question now, Mitchell replied, is whether we show them mercy or demonstrate what happens to species that threaten human colonies. Dr. Marcus Webb, the civilian scientist who had developed the Void Cloak technology, stood in the Defiance's science section monitoring the quantum field interactions across the entire fleet. The 63-year-old physicist had spent 15 years working on theoretical applications of dimensional phase variance, never imagining that his research would become humanity's greatest military advantage. Captain Mitchell, he reported over the communication system, all ships are maintaining stable quantum coherence. We can hold this formation indefinitely, or phase back into stealth mode within 30 seconds if necessary. The Caltharians are completely at our mercy. The scientist's words proved accurate as reports flooded in from the alien fleet. Panic had set in among the Caltharian crews, as they realized they were trapped inside a sphere of enemies who could disappear and reappear at will. Their weapons were useless against targets that existed partially outside normal space-time, and their own ships were too large and cumbersome to escape quickly. Admiral Zekthor found himself in the most humiliating position of his military career. His supposedly superior invasion force had been outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans hadn't just defeated them, they had done so with technology that made Caltharian military doctrine completely obsolete. Admiral, his communication officer announced with barely controlled fear. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're requesting to open negotiations." Zekthor's mandibles clicked nervously. In Caltharian culture, defeat in battle meant death or slavery. The concept of negotiation after losing was almost incomprehensible, but these humans had demonstrated capabilities that defied understanding. Perhaps their customs were equally alien. "Put them through," he commanded, straightening his posture to maintain some dignity in defeat. Captain Mitchell's image appeared. On the main screen, her expression calm but firm. Behind her, the bridge of the human flagship looked surprisingly similar to Caltharian designs, yet somehow more elegant, less focused on intimidation and more on efficiency. "Admiral Zekthor," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who held absolute tactical advantage. "I am Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your invasion of human space has been terminated. Your fleet is surrounded and completely outmatched. However, we are not interested in unnecessary destruction." The Caltharian admiral struggled to understand this development. "What are your terms, human?" "Simple. Withdraw your forces from this system and all other human territories. Carry a message back to your emperor. Terran space is now off limits to Caltharian expansion. Any future incursions will be met with the full force of our Ghost Fleet capabilities." Mitchell paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "We could destroy your entire armada right now, Admiral. Our technology gives us that capability, but we prefer to demonstrate strength through restraint rather than slaughter. Your people will live to carry our message, and the galaxy will learn that humanity is not the easy conquest your empire believed us to be." Light years away, in the crystalline palace that served as the heart of the Caltharian Empire, Emperor Vexcalar received the transmission from Admiral Zekthor with disbelief that quickly transformed into rage. The massive ruler's primary eyes blazed with fury, while his secondary pair focused on tactical implications that made his blood run cold. "A single human ship disabled our entire fleet?" he roared, his voice echoing through the throne chamber. 200 ghost ships appeared from nowhere. This is impossible. But even as he denied the reality of the situation, the Emperor's military advisors were already calculating the implications. If humans possessed technology that rendered conventional fleets useless, then the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically. The Caltharian Empire's expansion had just encountered its first truly insurmountable obstacle. Back in the New Geneva system, Admiral Zekthor found himself agreeing to terms he would have considered laughable just hours earlier. The human demonstration of technological superiority had been so complete that resistance seemed not just futile, but suicidal. "We accept your terms, Captain Mitchell," he transmitted, the words carrying the weight of centuries of Caltharian military pride crashing down around him. "My fleet will withdraw immediately, and I will carry your message to the Emperor." The Caltharian armada began its hasty retreat. The human ghost fleet maintained their positions until the last enemy vessel had disappeared into hyperspace. Only then did Captain Mitchell give the order that would become legendary in human military history. "All ships, fade to black. Ghost Fleet protocol complete." One by one, the human vessels phased back into their quantum stealth state, vanishing from normal space-time as completely as if they had never existed. Within minutes, the space around New Geneva appeared empty once again, with only the planet's orbital defense platforms visible to conventional sensors. Dr. Webb smiled as he monitored the final phase transitions, his life's work having exceeded every expectation. "Sarah," he said to Captain Mitchell, "I think we've just changed the course of galactic history. The Caltharian Empire will never look at humanity the same way again. More importantly," Commander Vasquez added from the silent dawn, "every other species in the galaxy is going to hear about this. Human space just became the most dangerous place for would-be conquerors to visit." The retreat of the Caltharian fleet marked more than just a military victory. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Within weeks, the story of the Ghost Fleet spread through trade routes and diplomatic channels, carried by species who had witnessed the impossible. An entire Caltharian invasion armada fleeing in terror from ships that moved like phantoms through space. Captain Mitchell stood on her bridge as the Defiance phased back into normal space above New Geneva, watching the blue planet continue its peaceful rotation, completely unaware of how close it had come to conquest. The colonists below would never know that their safety had been purchased not through superior firepower, but through superior innovation and the uniquely human ability to turn theoretical science into practical advantage. Navigation. Set course. For Earth, she commanded. It's time to report to command that the Ghost Fleet program has exceeded all expectations. The galaxy just learned that humanity doesn't need to be the strongest or the most numerous to be the most dangerous. As the human fleet dispersed to patrol routes throughout Terran space, their void cloak technology ensuring they remained invisible to all potential enemies, one thing had become clear. The age of easy conquest in human territory was over. The Empire might have superior numbers and conventional firepower, but humanity had something far more valuable: the ingenuity to make the impossible possible and the determination to use that ingenuity to protect their own. The ghost ships of the Terran Defense Fleet had vanished back into quantum stealth, but their legend would live on as a warning to any species foolish enough to threaten human worlds. In a galaxy full of ancient empires and established powers, humanity had carved out its place not through conquest, but through the demonstration that some technologies transcended conventional understanding and some species refused to be conquered at all.